Mr. Das, we really appreciate the fact that you've taken time out and you're speaking to the channel that matters, ET Now. Yeah, thank you very, very much for sparing time and talking about a unified budget, talking about an earlier budget and talking about many more reforms in the whole budget making exercise. Stakeholders in markets and Indian economy are going to be watching this interview, and so please do entertain questions that may get specific a little, but let's begin with the big picture. The whole idea is to reboot the budget making exercise. Do you believe this is a step in that direction? And will it accomplish the goal? Will it reform the budget making process? And why is it warranted? That's also the big question.
You see, first I would like to talk about the merger of the railway budget with the general budget. This is a practice which is continuing for the last 92 years. It started in 1924. There was a recommendation of the Ackworth Committee, and after that the railways have been presenting a separate budget. Now, why there was a separate budget at that time was that the total revenues of the railways were almost in the same order as that of the Government of India. And there were situations and there was expectation that the surplus revenues of railways will augment the general revenues of the government. Now, over the last 92 years, as you would be aware, the situation has considerably changed, and the general revenues, that is the revenues of the government, are today far higher than what the railway get by way of their revenues. So, therefore, the relevance of having a separate railway budget was under discussion, was under serious consideration for quite some time, and for quite a few years, I would say, and now the government has taken a decision. Now, we achieve four major points which I would like to mention in this regard. First, there is no constitutional requirement or legal requirement of having a separate railway budget. It was just by way of convention. So, we are therefore making a departure from the convention, and we are making the departure for the reason, that's the second point I would like to say, that we will now be able to take a comprehensive consolidated view of the overall fiscal situation of the government. Earlier it was a fragmented kind of thing. There was a separate railway budget, there was a general budget. Now it will enable us to take a comprehensive view of the whole thing. Third is that it brings railways to the center stage of our policy making, of our fiscal policy making. You will see that, you will note that, let us say take the example of the highways sector, which has made significant progress over the last few years, and that has happened with highways being a part of the general budget. So, now railways becoming a part of the general budget will enable the government to give greater focus to railways, and railway affairs come to the center stage of government's fiscal policy. And the third thing I would like to mention is that railways becoming a part of the general budget also would enable us to go for a kind of a multimodal planning with regard to our transport facilities. Multimodal would include the railways, the inland waterways, the highways, and of course the civil aviation to some extent. So, a multimodal planning of our transport sector policy also should be possible.
It's an important clarification that you've made, and very right points there to merge the railway budget, because railways is no longer the only transport that India has like it was 92 years back, and you're breaking away from convention. It's always good to step back and review conventions when you have to. But there are questions that some analysts have raised on the autonomy of Indian Railways after this, their whole fundraising exercise. And the other question is, was there more accountability if they had a separate budget, given how big they were? Your point appreciated that defense and roads today have a higher budget than railways do. But I just want to touch upon those two specific points: accountability, autonomy, and of course, the whole fundraising exercise. How does that continue after this merger?
You see, the number one, the functional autonomy of the railways will continue, as the finance minister has already clarified during the press conference which he held little earlier. The functional autonomy of the railways will continue. The decision making process, so far as railways is concerned, the delegation of financial powers which is available to their general managers and officers down the line will continue. So, the functional autonomy of the railways is in no way interfered with, and that will continue. With regard to accountability, railways becoming a part of the general budget, there will be a separate discussion on the railway, on the railways demand for grants, as the parliament, discusses the demands for grants of other ministries in the parliament. The functioning of the standing committee also will continue. There will be a standing committee for railways, and the standing committee of the parliament will naturally go through and review the entire budget, and they will take entire railway budget allocations, and they will have detailed interaction with the Ministry of Railways. Now, so far as the borrowing you are mentioning, now whatever borrowing railways undertake out of their balance sheet directly, it's already a part of Government of India debt. It's not as if the railways have a separate debt which is other than the government debt. Railways debt are a part of the government debt. Now, railways also raise some resources from institutions like IRFC or several other institutions, but that is not a borrowing, that is a kind of a leasing arrangement whereby the resources are raised and the assets are transferred temporarily and annual lease rental is paid. It's a kind of an annuity payment which railways make, and that is accounted for in the revenue account, in the revenue budget of the railways. So that practice will continue. So therefore, the borrowing capacity of railways, and railways do not really borrow, as I said, they raise lease finance for which annual installments are paid from the revenue account. That practice also will continue.
Mr. Das, while you've given enough clarifications for our viewers, there is one question that one must raise, and that is on tariff setting. That will still be the domain of the Indian Railways, and that is where the populism part really creeps in. Do you believe the two things should have gone in tandem? The whole, autonomy in setting up of tariffs, having a tariff commission there, and also merging the railways budget, because that would perhaps have been a two-pronged strategy.
You see, let us talk on and focus on what the cabinet has decided. The cabinet has taken a considered call, taking into account all aspects. The commercial issues of railways matters will be decided by the railway ministry, by the railway board, and in any case, no decision of railways, even now, no decision of the railways is taken in isolation of the government. It is a part of the government process. So therefore, there is, the working of the railways in no way will be sort of undermined. At the same time, the decision-making capability of railways also will not get undermined in any manner, and whatever decisions are required to be taken by the railways, I think that will continue. The process will continue, and please see the whole thing in the context of the overall changes and the reforms which the government are carrying out in various sectors. Now, the dividend payment which railways make to the general revenues, that the cabinet has now decided that henceforth railways will not pay the dividend. So to that extent, additional resources are now available for railways to spend, essentially, let us say, on capital expenditure. So therefore, functioning of railways, I think, is going to get strengthened without interfering their functional autonomy, without interfering with their decision-making power with regard to commercial matters.
Mr. Das, one man who is going to be busier than anybody else in Finance Ministry is going to be you, because there is an in-principle nod to advance the budget date by almost a month's time there. My two questions there is 1st February a date that we are really looking at? And the other part is there statistical preparedness for it? Will you have the data available? And because the data will be less than a month that was available previously, will estimates perhaps be a little less accurate? How are you going to tread along that?
You see, as already explained by the Finance Minister, the government will decide the actual date of budget presentation. But in principle, government has taken a view that advancement is something which is desirable, and the Finance Ministry is in a full state of preparedness to present the budget, even if it is if it is advanced by 3 or 4 weeks. The Finance Ministry is ready. There is no difficulty in that. And with regard to the data, you see, we have in any case the revised estimate meetings on the expenditure side. They usually start in the end of October, and they are always based on half-yearly expenditure and revenue trends. So that practice will continue. And so far as the CSO data, that is the advance estimate for the current year GDP is concerned, we were earlier getting it in the first week of February. Now we will get the provisional advance estimates in first week of January, and we have interacted with the CSO. There is the variation between the advance estimates which we get in February in the normal course and what we are now going to get on a provisional basis in first week of January. The differences between the two are usually seen to be very, very marginal, which will not impact our budget making. In any case, these advance estimates are only necessary, are relevant in the context of actually arriving at the fiscal deficit number. Fiscal deficit being a part of the GDP of the current year, and then growth projections for the next year is something which the economic division of the finance ministry, the Department of Economic Affairs makes. The CSO doesn't make that. So therefore, we will be able to present very realistic estimates.
Fair point indeed. Two last questions before I let you go, and the first question will have to be on the distinction that has been done away with between planned and non-planned expenditure. How does this really impact the government's own balance sheet? Does this make things more predictable, more transparent? Is this going to also make you arrive at a better deficit figure because you will know exactly how much you're going to spend? How does this really translate into your balance sheet eventually?
You see, the planned non-planned classification will not figure in the accounts or in the budget documents. Instead, we will have the revenue and the capital classifications. So therefore, it will bring greater focus on revenue and capital classifications. And over the years, there has been a tendency to see all planned expenditure as good and all non-planned expenditure as bad expenditure. So which is not correct actually. So therefore, when we make allocation for one ministry or for one entity, we take a comprehensive view. Again, this gives a holistic picture of the financial requirements of a particular ministry, and this will ensure that there is no under provisioning in either side. Sometimes in the currently the way the budget is made, sometimes there leads to kind of an imbalance in allocations between the plan and non-plan. I think removal of the classifications will bring in greater balance of budget allocation, resource allocation between the plan and non-plan.
And when do you begin the budget making consultations, sir?
Oh, that will start. I think we'll issue the, as I mentioned, we are ready, and we will be able to present the budget as and when government take a decision on as and when government decides on the particular date, and we should start them during the course of October.
All right. On that note, Mr. Shaktikanta Das, the Secretary in the Department of Economic Affairs and somebody who is going to be one of the key architects of the union budget and a unified one at that, in conversation with us right here at ET Now. Thank you very much, sir, for speaking to us. We really appreciate you taking time out and speaking to ET Now this afternoon.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ET Now Live. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.